In this lesson, I will continue with vector math and it will be about snap. And we can start right away. So just drag from the UV, release your mouse button and you write snap. You will get two options, so select vector math snap and then just take the vector from the snap to the surface of the material output, and if you now put it into rendered view, you get the black square. Snap is like a combination of, let's say, floor and modular. And what I mean by that is that you divide what comes in into small pieces in the same way as you do with modular. So if I want this to go into 10 small pieces, I use 1/10 here. And if I want it to go into 5 small pieces, I use 1/5 here, and so on. So to see all those squares, we can do exactly the same way as we do with modular, and that means that we first press Shift A and find input and value. So we select value here, put that in, and then we need this division here. So Shift A, go to converter, math, and in the math you can then select divide. And in the top you put 1. And in the bottom you use the value here, and we can put in a value in value, so say 4 as an instance. And then we need to connect that into this, but to do it in a proper way, we can then use combine XYZ. So I will move this a bit, and then just press Shift A, go to converter, and there you have the combine XYZ. So select that one, because then we have all these gray dots here and we have the blue here. So we put the blue into here and we use the X and we use the Y. And we put those two together. We get 4 squares in the row and we get 4 squares in the height here. So it's a matrix of 4 times 4. And if I change this to 5, we get 5 times 5 here. So it works with model, but you get like the floor here. So between, if it put 10, it's easier to me to calculate. So the first value down here will then be 0, because between 0 and 0.1, the floor will be 0. And then between 0.1 and 0.2, the floor will be 0.1. So that is how it increases all the way here. And that we can use to create a random number. And you might wonder, okay, but this is very sorted, everything looks good, so how do we do that? Well, you can take any texture like Musgrave or noise and pick out the information that we have from that texture into this, and then you get the random. So let's say we take the texture of noise, so Shift A up here and texture, and here we select the noise texture. We connect that to our UV and we take out the factor from the noise into the material output, and you have this normal noise texture. If we now change our input from the UV and use the snap instead and put that to the vector, you see that we get random numbers here. I can change this value from 10 to like 100, and you can see that we get a noise texture back. It's not really a noise texture as we saw it in the beginning, because right now if I zoom in, you can see it's still squares. So what we have is that we have 100 squares times 100 squares as a matrix here. And with 50, we have 50 squares and 50 squares. So it will then like pixelate our image by using the value here. So we can just change that value and put in different things. So let's say that we would use that in a practical way. We can then use it for, let's say, brick. So let's say that we are doing a brick using the brick texture, but we would like to make a tile out of it, so like a tile wall. In the brick texture we have 2 colors that we use, so it's hard to make several different types of colors. But with this method we can do that, and I can show you now by adding a brick texture. So just pressing Shift A, go to texture, and we select the brick texture like this. Then we can take the UV from our texture coordinate and just drag it into our vector here, and we can take the factor from the brick texture to the material output so we can see how it looks. So this is like a normal brick wall. Now we will change it into a tile wall. So we take the offset to 0 and we put the brick width and row height to 1 like this. And if I now put the scale to 1, you get 1 square here. And if I put it to 4 or like that, you get 4 times 4. So now the scale works exactly as it does with normal tiles. And I can now use the value we have down here together with the scale of our brick texture. So if I just take down this, it will be easier for me to work then, for you to see. So we can take the value directly to our scale here, and then you get 10 times 10, since I used the value 10 here. And now take a look at what we have in the brick texture for the factor. It's black on the tiles and it's white on the edges here, or the mortar. So that means that if I now would like to put in the noise color, then I can use a mix RGB and use the color from here to the top color of the mix RGB, since it's black, and the bottom color will then be the edges. So I will just put in a color mix here. So Shift A, go to color, mix RGB, and put it in here. And change so the factor still goes to the factor on the mix here. And take the color from the noise texture to the top color here. And we can change the lower one to black. And if I now take up this again and you look clear here, you can see we have different colors. Now they are rather pale because of the noise texture gives rather pale colors, but we can easily adjust that with a contrast here. So we can put in color contrast. So Shift A, color, go to brighten contrast, and just increase the contrast like this, and you get different types of color all over the place. And everything works in this. So if I change the smoothness of the mortar or the mortar size, we get that in, but we now have different colors. If we want a row height that is like rectangular, you can take down the mortar size a bit. So then I just change the row height to 0.5, and we get bricks that are like rectangular, but now we also need to adjust the snap here. So we do the same, but with a y-axis. So we put in a divide by 2 here, so we also get 0.5 on this. So Shift A, and then converter, math, put that into the bottom here, change it to divide, and change this to 2. And suddenly we have now colors that are random in a rectangular shape, as is exactly as we have in the brick texture here. So that is one way to do it. And if you now change anything in our noise texture, all these colors will change. So it doesn't matter if it's detail, scale, roughness, whatever, you now have your own random number generator just by changing these parameters. And now we use the noise texture color output. We could of course use a color ramp if we only want like 4 different colors or something like that. And just to be clear, I can show you how that works as well. So Shift A, and then you use converter and go to color ramp, change the linear to constant in your color ramp, press the plus twice, and then you can change the first one to one color. You can select whatever color. I think I take red here, and to the next I can take green, and to this one I can then take blue, and for the last one I think I will use yellow. So now I have 4 different colors here, and then it's just to connect it either to the color or to the factor like this, and use that color to the mix instead. So if I do that, I get a mix between these, and the reason right now that we mostly get green and blue is because that is how a noise texture works, because it works with rather high numbers. So we all mostly in this area here, not so much in the lower area, not so much in the maximum area, but that we can control with the contrast here as well. So we can use that together with the other. We can take away. Let's see. So we don't need it for that one. So by changing or increasing the contrast here, we can now also do like we have in the brick, using the bias here. We can in the same way with very little contrast go to, so we only use the middle party, or we can increase it, the contrast, so then we have everything from red to blue, because now it's very much black and white, perhaps a little less in the middle. So using contrast here can adjust so we get about the same amount of blue, yellow, green and red. Or we could just change this as well, so we drag them closer to each other. But this is a simple way to increase the contrast, use the noise texture, and by that we can also get random numbers as we have now in the color ramp here. So you can do a lot of stuff when it comes to random numbers, when it comes to tiles and bricks and so on, together with Snap. And it's mostly when it comes to brick and tiles, because we will always get some type of square or rectangular face out from Snap. But it's really good to use, because it's not only when it comes to color. You can use it if you want like random scratches on each tile, random edges, perhaps they are not put in so perfect, so like random movement on each separate tile and so on. Then you can use Snap as a starting point to get those random numbers out, and then make your wall with all the tiles or brick closer to reality. So that is a really good, easy to use node that many people forget to use, but it's there, use it, could be good to have. So that was about Snap, and that will conclude this lesson. So just practice as usual, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.